Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Thanks so much for joining us here at this listening session for Maryland's Climate Pathway. I'm Chris Hoagland. I'm the Air Director at the Maryland Department of the Environment. We're the state agency that regulates pollution, including the greenhouse gas pollution that causes climate change. And we are tasked under Maryland law with establishing a plan for Maryland to achieve our very ambitious climate change goals. Thanks very much to the Hagerstown Community College for hosting us tonight at this great venue. And thanks to our partners at the University of Maryland in this project who are joining us for tonight. You'll be hearing not just from me, Chris Hoagland, Department of the Environment, but also Shannon Kennedy, University of Maryland Center for Global Sustainability, and other experts who have joined us in this project to establish a pathway to achieve Maryland's climate change goals. So this session, this is a listening session, so we are going to try not to talk at you all too much. We are going to have a brief presentation up at the top, and then we'll all take sort of a pause, have a snack outside, and then we'll turn to comment, and then we'll hear from everyone who would like to offer comments. Before we get started, I'd like to pause. Do we have any Maryland elected officials in the room? No? Okay. Well, if you guys see any join, let me know. We'd like to recognize them. So we'll start a bit with some background from me about what this is all about and why we're here. And then our colleagues from the university, led by Shannon Kennedy, will present some of the results from their evaluation of a pathway to achieve Maryland's climate change goals. So first, why are we talking about climate change? Climate change obviously has really significant impacts in Maryland and around the world. Just a snippet of some of the impacts that we're currently experiencing and will expect to experience in the future. A couple of maps here. The one on the left depicts temperature change that has already occurred. The sort of the reddish areas are parts of the country that have gotten warmer. Bluish areas are parts of the country that have gotten colder. Maryland has gotten warmer, with the exception of the western Maryland counties. In fact, Maryland is warming substantially faster than the rest of the country on average, though it is also warming here in western Maryland as well. The map on the right shows anticipated future changes in precipitation if we don't substantially reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. The sort of warm-colored parts of the map are parts of the country that are going to get drier, and as we all know, that's already a significant challenge in the west and the southwest. And the areas in blue are parts of the country that will get wetter, and Maryland is expected to get wetter. We're expected to get more rain overall, and in particular, increased frequency and intensity of storms. We all experienced a little bit of that yesterday. I don't know about you guys, but I spent a lot of time in my basement dealing with water coming in when the heavy rain came through. And so that's something we can expect to experience more as the climate changes. But there's a lot of other there are a lot of other changes that we will face here in Maryland due to climate change. Just a selection, tourism industries that rely on snow will be adversely impacted because we'll have warmer winters and less snow. Changes in water temperature affect aquatic habitats. That'll affect what fish are able to live. Warmer summers and longer growing seasons will increase vector-borne diseases like those spread by ticks. Hotter summers increase everyone's air conditioning needs and our electrical bills. Heat waves are also profound public health threats. They exacerbate existing health conditions that people may face, and also heat alone can be dangerous. And then, of course, in Maryland, as a coastal state, we're very concerned about sea level rise. Maryland has lots and lots of coastline thanks to the Chesapeake Bay, so we are uniquely vulnerable to changes in sea level. And recently updated sea level rise projections just this year estimated that during the first half of this century, we should expect sea level rise to accelerate. So during the first half of this century, the sea level in Maryland will rise more than it did the entirety of last century. So the challenges are accelerating. But on to good news. We have a lot of momentum here in Maryland to address climate change. Maryland is a longtime leader in climate change. We have reduced our climate pollution faster than just about any other state, including California. Maryland is right at the top of the list of states at the pace at which we are reducing our greenhouse gas emissions. So we have momentum on our side, and we also have very ambitious goals here in Maryland. We have strong laws driving greater progress and more rapid progress. The requirements that we have in Maryland law, as of the law passed last year, are that we will reduce our statewide greenhouse gas emissions. Greenhouse gases are the pollutants that cause climate change. We will reduce statewide greenhouse gas emissions in Maryland by 60% by 2031, and we will achieve net zero across the economy by 2045. What that means is that the total amount of greenhouse gas emissions being produced in Maryland every year will be equal to the amount that we're pulling out of the atmosphere every year, primarily through our forests. These are the most ambitious goals in law in any state in the country. So that's what we're here to talk about, and that's the task that the state faces. To talk about how we can get there, I'm going to turn to Shannon Kennedy from the University of Maryland Center for Global Sustainability, our partners in this effort. I'll just speak a little bit about the partnership quickly as you come up, Shannon. So the state, we decided to bring in some of the best scientists in the world on this topic who work right here in Maryland at the University of Maryland. To ask the scientists, okay, let's step back and just say, how can the state do this? How can we get to these goals? Get their best thinking to inform the government, where we're now going to write down all of the policies and regulations and other things to achieve it. So the scientists have produced this analysis that shows Maryland how we can achieve these goals, and now we're taking that on the road to hear from people throughout the state through these sessions. What do you think? What do you think Maryland should do? And then in December, the state will produce our final plan, where we say, based on what we've learned from the scientists, based on what we've heard from the public, here's the plan that we're going to pursue. And that'll come in December. So your input tonight here is critical to that process. And so get thinking about comments and questions you may have, and Shannon will walk us through some of the analysis that we have to start with. Thanks, Shannon.
Hello, thank you for that great introduction. Yes, I am Shannon Kennedy from the Center for Global Sustainability at the University of Maryland, and I'm excited to be here to talk about our report. And I actually have some of our team here as well, and as Chris mentioned, we are welcoming your comments, questions, feedback. We'd love to hear it during the break and even after the listening session as well. So you heard about the great and ambitious goals that Maryland has really set a tone for the rest of the country and the world, and what a state such as Maryland is able to achieve. And so our team of expert thinkers and modelers put together this pathway based on our analysis and this all-of-society approach, which is a comprehensive strategy for how Maryland can meet both their 2031 and 2045 goals. And we did this through the current policies, which we will achieve 51% reductions by 2031. And I'll talk a little bit more about what those different scenarios mean in a bit. And then we put together a full all-of-society approach, all-economy, that we are calling Maryland's Climate Pathway, which provides an inclusive and comprehensive approach to realize the 60% goal. And so here you can see is the timeline to achieving these reductions. And as Chris mentioned, a lot of action is already underway. Maryland is already halfway there. So the current policies will realize a significant chunk of these emissions, and you'll also see that through a bit of additional action and through this comprehensive approach, Maryland can reach its net zero goal as well. But our report actually focuses a little bit more on the 2031 goal, and so that's what I will be talking about today. But we did want to make sure that the pathway we put forth would put the state on a trajectory to meet 2045 as well. So now let's focus on the 2031 target. So this summary figure from our report shows how we can achieve the target, and I would love to break it down. On the far left, circled in the red, can't really see it, but I think it is circled. You can see that the far left shows the total greenhouse gas emissions reductions in Maryland for its 2006 baseline, which is what is stated in the law. And this is the starting point for the reductions. And you can see the far right shows the greenhouse gas emissions shows the emissions needed to meet the 2031 goal. And so this report is really all about how we can get from the far left to the right. And so the first step is taking into account what Maryland has already achieved, and you have heard we've already achieved a lot. So the emissions reductions as of 2020 already put us halfway to the goal, which is that green portion. And so for the rest of the bars, which reflect each of the key sectors within Maryland, you can see the shaded area, which shows the current policies, as I mentioned, and the darker shaded area is this additional policies and actions that encompass Maryland's climate pathway. And so it's important to note that the current policies do reflect full implementation of what's already on the books. And the darker shade, as I noted, can be achieved through these additional measures and policies. And if there's any specific questions about the modeling scenarios in particular, or a little bit more technical questions, again, we're happy to answer those questions during the break. And so now I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into what are the policies that encompass each of these sectors that you saw in the waterfall chart prior. And so a lot of policies and actions were analyzed by our team, and to look at what could altogether encompass this pathway to 60%. And so each sector has one of these figures that shows what the current policies, as I mentioned, would get us a good way there. That's already on the books. But then there's additional, and that's the dotted line. And then there's additional measures that need to fill that gap and get us all the way there. And so the key policies, I can't really see it, so I'm gonna actually take this and do a little walking. So the key policies before the electricity sector are 100% energy sources by 2035. I've already noted collaboration is critical and a key element of our pathway and our modeling. So collaboration across Maryland and also in neighboring states. This is coming from the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative that you might have heard of, that Maryland is a leader in. And then boosting renewable energy deployment and accessibility, for example, through federal solar energy tax credits. So that's taking advantage of the Inflation Reduction Act, which is at the federal level, and making sure that all those funding and spending and incentives that are coming through this historic bill is actually meeting where it's meant to be delivered. In the transportation sector, the key policies are smart growth and zoning reform to reduce vehicle miles traveled, ensuring access to state and federal incentives, again, IRA, Inflation Reduction Act, and the bipartisan infrastructure law, adopting California's Clean Fleets regulation, reach 100% electric bus sales by 2025, and electrifying non-road sources such as lawn care equipment. So you can tell there's a lot of policies. They really cover the whole transportation space, and this is the same for every sector. We really wanted this to be a truly comprehensive approach. The building sector, zero emission appliances are key, not only for reducing emissions, but for improving air quality and our safety and our homes in general. This, again, is another critical area for equity and access, making sure all Marylanders have the ability to benefit from these zero-emission appliances, zero-emission construction and creating these buildings, and extending energy efficiency standards. For the industrial sector, we modeled implement buy clean standards for manufactured products, switch fuel use and cement industry away from coal, include the manufacturing sector in decarbonization efforts. So a paper and analysis we did actually in last year, in the fall of last year, was actually looking specifically at the manufacturing sector in Maryland, which is currently not covered under law. It's not mandated to be decarbonized. And that's leaving a lot of emissions on the table. And so we find that including that would be a substantial amount of reductions that we wouldn't be realized otherwise. And then industrial processes and product use, lower process-related emissions, and cement manufacturing. Cement manufacturing is typically harder to decarbonize sector, but there's a lot that can be done, and actually you'll find in our report we have several case studies that are looking at the folks that are already on the ground wanting to do this work, they're already taking action, and there is eagerness to lower these emissions in that sector. And then we use carbon capture and storage to reduce cement emissions beyond 2035. This is getting to that 2045 question of net zero. Reduce non-CO2 emissions from air conditioning and refrigeration. Fossil fuel sector, reduce natural gas use, widespread monitoring of natural gas infrastructure. Again, ensuring affordability and no increased costs for Marylanders. A big benefit of our model is it's dynamic. All the sectors interact with each other, and this all-society approach is going to help make sure that no one's left behind, that everyone is in it together for Maryland to meet these missions and reap these benefits. Waste management, increase recycling and waste diversion away from landfills. That's something that an everyday Marylander can do and can really benefit not only emissions reductions, but also just increasing air quality as well, and improve access to composting. Agriculture, implement climate smart agriculture practices, and pursue zero cost mitigation opportunities for livestock. And the forestry and land use sector, we actually did not include in our modeling because these emissions will be realized more post 2031 and will be very important for the 2045 net zero goal. They will be reflected in the state's plan come December. And then economy-wide, we do model a cap and invest program, which we've seen in California and New York, and is growing in popularity as a policy. And the intention of a program such as this is to reinvest and support Marylanders and support this transition. Again, this idea of not leaving anyone behind. And it delivers 4% of the emissions reductions of that gap that's left between the current policies and meeting the 60%, so that Maryland's kind of pathway section. And as I mentioned, there are a lot of benefits outside of just emissions reductions. So we see a lot of health and economic benefits for Marylanders. Notably, we see over 16,000 new jobs created, 16,700 jobs created actually, in 2031, and $1.5 billion increase in personal income, and notably a lot of health benefits are associated with these policies. And we used 2 different models to help deliver these results based on our model. So what can Maryland do to realize those reductions and implement those policies? So there's a lot of implementation opportunities, and associated with those are a lot of considerations. So throughout the report, which you can find on marylandsclimatepathway.com, each sector has a section on how this can be implemented and what are those major sticky pieces that need to be considered. And frankly, what all of you are here to help deliver. We are here to listen, hear from you, get your feedback, so that we can help ensure that all these are reality. So you can see here, I'll just quickly run through it, but each sector has these key pieces of implementation opportunities and considerations that need to be thought about from everyone here today. So what does it mean to ensure an equitable transition? How do we get access to the critical charging infrastructure and to public transit? What about renters in this process? They matter too. Everyone needs to be involved in this transition. And similarly, there's a lot of considerations involved with these other sectors as well. and you'll see a theme, is just making sure that everyone is together in this transition. And I'll pass off to Chris, but also this is where to submit comments if you don't feel comfortable coming up to the microphone today. And also, I think, oh yeah, that's it. So, thank you.
Thanks very much, Shannon. So, I hope that was, got everybody thinking about the challenge we have ahead and the transition that is underway. We are going to take a quick break before we go to public comment, but to get you guys, your juices flowing further, we're going to just ask a couple of questions so that we can all think through some of the major questions the state faces, okay? So we're going to do just like a quick in-the-room survey, ask you guys to raise your hands in response to these questions. So first one is about clean electricity, a central component of our strategy to respond to climate change. So Governor Moore has set a goal for Maryland to achieve 100% clean electricity by 2035. By the end of this year, we have to recommend a policy to achieve that goal as part of this process, and we'd like your input on what you think should qualify as clean power under our new policy. So I'm going to name a series of energy sources, and by show of hands, we'd like to hear from everyone whether you consider that to be a clean power source. So first, solar power.
We raise our hand for clean or dirty?
Raise your hand if you think it's clean, each of these, yeah. So solar, okay.
How many people live on solar? Out of everybody that's got their hands up.
Wait a minute, who are
They said it's
you?
clean.
Who are you? Why are you speaking?
We'll get to the open discussion component here shortly.
Thank you.
So we got some hands for solar. How about wind power? Okay. How about hydropower?
Which one?
This is like hydroelectric dams.
It depends.
Yeah, that's a good answer too.
That.
All right. And then how about nuclear power? Okay.
No.
Okay, thanks. How about woody biomass?
Absolutely not.
Any hands for woody biomass? Okay. And how about municipal solid waste, sometimes known as trash incineration? Okay, thanks. So those are all really tough questions, right? And there were a lot of it depends. So appreciate all of your creative thinking on that when we're talking about clean electricity. Another area that's part of the transition is transitioning to clean electric heat away from fossil fuel combustion appliances. So if your home heating system breaks and you call a contractor to come out and fix it, the contractor will often replace your broken system with a like-for-like new system. We're trying to design policies that encourage HVAC contractors to explain the benefits of higher efficiency heating systems to their customers, to break that cycle. By show of hands, how many of you would likely rely upon a contractor to pick the right heating system for your home? Okay, how many of you feel confident that you could pick the right system for your home instead of taking a contractor's recommendation? Okay, that's interesting, thank you. Okay, a couple more, and then we'll take a break and open for comments. So another area, in fact, the largest source of climate pollution in Maryland is cars and light trucks, our transportation system. So transitioning to electric vehicles, or EVs, is critical for achieving our climate change goals. The best-selling car in America right now is an EV, so that transition is underway. Does anyone here have concerns about owning an EV and would be willing to say briefly what your concerns are? Or, great, so we got a couple, okay, and then after that, are there any EV owners in the room who would like to describe their experience, positive and negative? So a couple for them too. Okay, so first, anyone with concerns? I saw a couple of hands up. Yes, sir, me.
I live totally off grid. I have a solar power system. My biggest concern would be, well, one, would be the ability to charge that system with an affordable off-grid system or an affordable power system able to charge a car. So that would be the first one. The second one would be a safety concern with the batteries. I run lithium batteries, which are pretty good. It's a great system, but the fire hazards of lithium batteries are quite extensive. So that would be kind of like my two biggest concerns. You know, I have a medium-sized system, about 12,000 watts of solar, but you know, to charge a car off of that system cost me 30 grand out of my pocket. But it'll run my house with give and take, run this, don't run that sort of thing, but it would never charge a car for me to drive to work every day. And, you know, for that, I make 6 figures. So for anybody who is a normal, everyday working person, it's just, it would be out of their reach without being subsidized by the government and everybody else.
Yeah, great, thank you. Those are good ones, and of course, not only at sort of a home scale, but at the scale of the entire grid, there's similar challenges.
Yeah, renters,
yeah.
public housing.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Okay, so how about one more with the concerns? Yes, sir.
Well, making of the batteries is kind of a dirty process, and also when the batteries have run out, what to do with them.
Mm-hmm. Big battery will take the batteries back. But that's a big issue. Where do you get rid of 40,000 amp hours worth of lithium batteries?
Yeah, so need the recycling infrastructure people. That's another good one. So,
Radioactive waste area.
yeah. All right, so then let's turn to the other one. So any current EV owners who would like to share any experiences before break? Yes, you sir, and then the blue, and then
Yeah, no, I have a 2017 Chevy Volt, which is actually, it runs on electricity or on fossil fuel. It's the most dependable, best car I've ever owned my entire life. It's fun to drive. I wish it were a Bolt, which was all electric, but it actually works well in the city because we never have to buy gas. We just recharge it overnight in our garage, and it works for us beautifully. Thanks.
What size system do you have to charge your?
We just charge off the grid.
You charge it off of fossil fuels. All right.
I've got a
Yeah, I would rather we did, but
Well,
I
I'm
don't
just
have the
saying,
power
that's-
over that. So.
That's what you got to look at when you're talking about charging a car battery.
Yes, and that's a big part of the analysis, accounting for the, how we change our energy systems and how nothing's free, right? And how we're switching from one energy source to another, and they have different implications. And so then, thank you for that. And then, yes, sir, the blue, who was the, yes, sir, thank you.
So my wife and I have 2 EVs, and we've been EV drivers since 2012. And we've got over 150,000 miles of EV driving between the two of us. So we've been at this for a while. They are great vehicles. They have been extremely dependable, extremely low maintenance, and they're just a better vehicle to drive. We still have our old gas car for our daughter in college, and the rare times I've driven that, the fumes can't believe I used to like that car. So there's a lot of health benefits from driving an EV. We do charge from solar, so we have a solar system that covers our house, basically the house, geothermal, and the cars, and we cover about 90% of that. It was closer when we had one EV, but now we're not quite covering it all. So you can do it, but it is a fairly large system. A couple comments on some of the concerns that were raised. Battery fires are actually not nearly as common as, they get a lot of press because they're new and EVs get a lot of press, good or bad, it kind of gets elevated. Gasoline fires in cars are very prevalent as well, and per capita for vehicles, there's actually more fires in a gasoline car, and those tend to be very quick and explosive, where when there is a battery fire, it's slower and you have time to get out of the vehicle. So there's a different kind of safety record there. In terms of the batteries, one of the ways I like to think about this is gasoline is like a single-use straw. You get it out of the ground, you use it once, you throw it away. But a battery is a cyclical system, or I think will be over time. The battery can be recycled, made into new batteries. There aren't enough EV batteries yet to have that industry be mature, but it's being worked on. So over time, we'll actually mine for less minerals because we'll be getting most of our battery minerals from old batteries. So,
How big is your PV system, just for reference?
my PV system is 15.1 kilowatts.
What is it, 15?
15.1, yeah.
That's a pretty big system.
Pretty good size system, yeah.
Yeah, it's good size. Okay, so thanks everyone. We could talk about EVs all night.
Yeah, I can talk about much longer.
But I think it's important, like, to just hear different perspectives and experiences, because some people have and some people don't, and so I think that's useful.
Can I just one last thing?
Oh yeah, sure.
So on the comment about gasoline, the Union of Concerned Scientists has some maps out, and I will forward this to your website, where they show that virtually in the entire country, charging an EV from the grid is cleaner than running gasoline in a gasoline car. So even though if you charge your EV from the grid, it's not as clean as it could be, it is much cleaner than the alternative of running a gasoline car virtually everywhere. So if you think about, well, I don't want to get an EV because I'm charging fossil fuels, that's not really a good reason to avoid them.
Thanks, appreciate that.
If you can't afford solar, like most people can't, then how do you charge it if the grid's down for a week? How do you go to work? You just lose a week's worth of pay?
Well, but if the grid's
So
out,
the grid comes back up, and can we charge it?
but also if the grid's out, a lot of gas stations won't operate because they need electricity to pump the gasoline.
But I can run my car for 400 some miles on gas. I can have gas sitting in cans.
So
Fill
certainly,
my truck up.
yeah, reliability is an important point as well. So
We're
I do want to move us to the,
force.
yeah, sure.
We need to get the grid straight before we start going to all electric. Most people cannot afford to go buy solar. And by saying, well, the government, well, that means you, because all your taxes are gonna go up to cover what the government, we already can't afford what we spend. It's just gonna get worse.
Yeah, so that's a good comment. That's the kind of stuff we need to hear. So let's take
I
a quick-
refinanced my
quick
house to get my solar system.
Okay.
We're already financing
Right?
fossil fuels, you
Well,
can't
that's-
really say that.
Yeah, sorry, so we
Right.
got a lot, I appreciate it. This is
We
all.
subsidize fossil
we wanna
fuels quite
hear-
heavily.
We wanna hear everything, but, it won't work
crazy.
if we hear one by one. So
Sorry.
let's do the quick break. Everyone grab a drink. Had a restful break there. We're gonna get back to it here. Y'all take your seats. All right, thank you. And Shannon, would you mind joining me up here for the Q&A portion or for the comment portion? Okay. So now our hope is that we're going to stop talking so that you all can. So we got two microphones set up at the front of these two aisles, and we'll also have a microphone we can run out to anyone who won't be standing. If you'd like to offer a comment, please go ahead. Come on up in line, and we'll just switch back and forth between the two lines as we go. And it looks like we've got a decent crowd here, so we could ask everyone to try to be brief, aim for about 2 minutes. Then we'll ensure that we can get to everybody before we run out of time. So I see the gentleman over here, and then we'll just switch back and forth. So anyone get in line if you're prepared. Yes, sir.
Is there a format? Just print, okay.
Go ahead.
So,
2 minutes are yours to do with as you please.
Okay, one of the concerns we have is I do finance projects, energy projects, be they efficiency or renewable. The current policies that are getting you to the 30 or 60% are what we are using now. The problem is in a hospital environment where you have a requirement for energy resiliency, there is also then a requirement for diesel powered generation. We're trying to use the existing policies to justify microgrids with combined heat and power. The life cycle of that system is 20 to 25, even 30 years with rebuilds. With the targets that you have in the cap and invest, it may destroy the financial viability of taking that measure now. So if there's the possibility to set aside credits in that cap and invest for mission critical or community critical applications, so that when they've taken proactive response to climate change and energy resiliency for critical community assets, that they don't get penalized from the program moving down. Similarly, in hospital environment, steam is a critical resource that doesn't have a lot of options. Whereas there is research right now in industrial heat pumps and other things, there really isn't a commercial solution for that yet. And that's another reason that we think some set-aside credits for these critical functions would be warranted.
Okay, appreciate that.
Thank you.
That's very good detail. Very, very useful. Thank you. Yes.
Hello. Can everyone hear me okay? Yeah. Anyway, thank you very much for opening this listening session to all of us. The purpose of the pathway report analysis is to find the best way to eliminate greenhouse gases, especially CO2 and methane. So this means we need to be honest with ourselves and not follow political definitions of what lobbyists have been calling clean and renewable, when it is everything but. So specifically, I'm talking about burning trash, burning farm waste, and burning wood for energy. All three emit enormous amounts of CO2 or methane in addition to many other damaging chemicals. Yet they are still included in the Renewable Portfolio Standard as Tier 1 and renewable sources, and even being incentivized by unknowing ratepayers. So the pathway report keeps the Maryland RPS system to increase the production of renewable energy sources, solar, wind, hydropower, and it says other alternatives to fossil fuels. That, I'm assuming, is going to be trash, biogas, and biomass. Burned at the incinerators, which emit more greenhouse gas emissions per unit of electricity produced than any other power source or fossil fuel. They also emit more health-damaging air pollutants that replace sources of energy. So these sources need to be removed from the RPS system as soon as possible. Otherwise, we are talking to ourselves and we're engaging in magical thinking. You also talked a lot about equitable transitions. However, the RPS system compounds environmental injustices in Maryland. The incinerators, the clear cutting of our forests, the pellet factories, the thermal plants, the biogas digesters, all of those are always situated in low-income, underserved, and already overburdened communities. Or opportunity zones, as investors know them. So I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I saw that you had your industrial building everywhere biomass. There was no line to portray where this biomass is going, because I'm assuming you're not accounting for the greenhouse gases it emits. We need our trees to draw down the pollution and help us with the worst effects of climate change. We most definitely do not need to log them, and we don't need to burn them. So please just keep the forests in place, and let's stay away from all of those fuels. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, and just a reminder, we will have the forestry sector and land sector included in the report that will come out in December, which will reflect that.
It will reflect that you're not going towards biomass?
We're still doing the analysis, but I would love to hear your thoughts and comments.
Because if
more
you're
on
starting
that.
up 2031 forwards, then that is a
You wouldn't mind
disaster right
the
there.
microphone so that we can get the notes right? It's okay, yeah, it just, the microphone.
Oh, you. I think we're good.
Okay.
Yeah, we already did. I would love to
Okay.
talk more and hear your
All right,
your
yeah,
thoughts.
I'll get in
Yeah,
touch.
after. Thank you.
Thanks so much. And then next on to this side. Yes, sir.
I kind of got here late, so I only took 2 questions here. From your bullet points, you had increased recycling. So in Washington County, when recycling and the big green bins first come out, it was free, baby. It was awesome. You could throw your recycling in there, and recycling does reduce the amount of waste that goes in the landfill. I'm no joker. I can see that. I had 3 kids, family of 5, but then after a while, hey, guess what? Them big green bins, they went away, and guess what now? You gotta pay to recycle. So if you're gonna increase recycling, make it free, right? That's gonna incentivize everybody to recycle. So That was from your first bullet point up there. Don't start charging for something that was actually free initially. You know, it's kind of like the bait and switch. Lure everybody in with something and then start charging them for it later. Kind of reminiscent of the state. The second bullet point that I noticed up there was you had that this pathway is going to increase personal income by what, $1.5 million. How is this going to increase personal income? How is my income going to be increased by going down this path? So that was my only questions that if you could address. And for everybody out here, I do live off grid and I do burn a ton of wood to heat my home and provide for my family. So God bless the trees. Plant more trees. That'll be more fuel.
I appreciate that comment. I guess to answer the one question about the economic analysis, and feel free to jump in on the university side. So that's aggregate personal income across the state. That's one of the measures of the size of the state's economy. Is if you just add up the salary of every person in the state, then you have statewide personal income. And so, as part of this this pathway report and required by Maryland law and all of the versions of the climate plan, we have to evaluate the impacts of all of these changes on Maryland's economy. And we have to demonstrate that those impacts are positive with any plan that we put forward. That's a requirement in Maryland law. So we evaluate the future economic impacts of the transition to cleaner energy sources, and those tend to be positive for Maryland's economy as a whole. And so aggregate statewide personal income, the total salaries of everyone in Maryland, goes up because the economy is larger when we transition to clean energy sources. So that's what that number is saying in there, on that chart.
When you look at it like that, you look at people on the east side of South Mountain. I work in Montgomery County. You know what I'm saying? I know what the salaries are down there. I know how those people live down there. We don't live like that up here. And I am blessed to be able to work down there because I sacrifice and do the travel. But it's so unrealistic to look at that side of the mountain and this side of the mountain and say, people in Washington County, your income is going to be increased by this. It's ridiculous. If you want to sell this in Western Maryland, you need to separate that out and show the working class people how this is going to benefit them.
So there's more detail in the reports that shows how the statewide numbers are broken out geographically, and then also with the economic analysis. In December we'll have more detail about what are the types of jobs. But generally, investments need to be made in every part of the state, in every community in the state, to build new clean energy, and that's an economic opportunity in the state. So it's going to lead to economic benefit overall, and that's the goal, right? Is to harness not just the climate change benefits of this, but the economic benefits of a clean energy transition. And so I'm going to try to stop talking so much. I do appreciate when people ask questions. We'll try to answer them time permitting. So next, thank you for your patience.
Thank you very much for this opportunity, everybody here. I'm speaking on behalf of the Mid-Atlantic Propane Gas Association. I'm currently president. We kind of feel like the neglected stepchild. Propane actually has a very green message in what we bring to the table. It contains no methane. It burns extremely clean. It's a fuel that can be used for fleets. I'm currently working with a multi-billion-dollar company that is reaching their 25% reduction in carbon footprint by switching to propane. They've actually exceeded that, and they're also saving a lot of money in doing so with the price of gas versus the price of propane. The gentleman that's looking for a solution for your backup system for hospital, you should talk to me. We have a CHP that is able to provide electrical grid and hot water with one system with clean, efficient propane. It will reduce your carbon footprint, and there are grants from the state and also the federal government that will help you pay for that. Propane is a green energy. And it does help with equity. Electricity is currently more expensive, and basically what I have here, electricity was 68% more expensive per million BTU than propane. There's a lot of low-income people, especially in Western Maryland, that do use propane, and if they had to convert strictly to electric, again, that would be an economic hardship. There is a big push. I'm gonna get on a little bit of a soapbox here. I apologize, but there is a big push towards electrification. And I have grandchildren. We all see climate change is real. We all need to get there. But putting our electricity on a single source that all of our heating, all of our cooling, all of our fueling is electricity puts it all in one grid. We could go into the numerous things that could potentially happen to that grid. And speaking on behalf of propane, there is a source to use that and to ban us as a fossil fuel when we're really different and we can help get to where we want to be, either through buses. That's a prime thing. An electric school bus costs close to $400,000. You can get the same propane bus for $240,000, and the amount of tax dollars you spend will get eaten up by that electric bus where you could buy almost two, maybe more. You actually get more carbon footprint, what you're looking to get, by going with a propane school bus than you would with putting it all in electric. And I mentioned earlier the batteries. What do? You know, a school bus battery is another very large thing that you have to deal with. And when those batteries are dead, basically the school bus is. And I got that from Bluebird buses. So we've had discussions with them on how we present ourselves. So I could stand up here and talk for a half an hour, but you get the gist of what I'm saying. We would like to be part of the plan, the solution, not to be excluded.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that input. All right.
Good evening, Paul Fry, President and CEO of the Washington County Chamber of Commerce. And I'm here to share some concerns about the recommendation regarding Maryland's climate reduction goals as it relates to the private sector and citizens of the state of Maryland. And my primary message is this. Governor Moore, MDE, and advocates in the General Assembly of Maryland's climate reduction goals need to heighten their focus from banning and taxing fuels and taxing Marylanders to the need to identify and utilize multiple energy sources that will allow us to responsibly address more reasonable clean energy goals. And yes, this includes the use of natural gas, hydrogen, and even the responsible use of some fossil fuels like heating oil. The state of Maryland is making it increasingly expensive to run a business and to live and work here. We are currently 10th highest tax state for our gasoline tax. We are tied for third highest in the country for a $15 an hour minimum wage. As far as our ranking in the U.S. for economic, fiscal, and regulatory freedom, and the overall cost of doing business, we are ranked 44th out of 50 in the country. Our businesses are leaving, and others not interested in locating in Maryland due to the negative impact on commerce. I've got two examples. One is a current 750-person service industry in Washington County. They're looking to expand their operations. They want to stay in Washington County, but because of all the regulations, they're looking to relocate to Pennsylvania. That's 750 jobs. An executive from Pennsylvania-based company called me just this morning, and he wanted to see what I thought about them opening up a branch office here in Maryland from Pennsylvania. And knowing what I knew, I couldn't in good conscience say I thought it was a good idea for him. And why? Again, we're ranked third highest minimum wage in the U.S. The financial impact on business of recently passed legislation, including sick and safe leave, family medical leave insurance, and Maryland's Blueprint for Education. And looking ahead to the 2024 General Assembly here in Maryland, to pay for all these policies, including climate reduction policies and unfunded mandates, there will likely be discussions on increase in corporate income tax, increase in sales tax, the continued push for combined reporting taxes, replenishing the unemployment fund, and replenishing the transportation fund. All of these expenses to businesses, nonprofits, and municipalities are passed on to the consumer and taxpayer. And those that end up getting the most negatively impacted are the people we're trying to help the most. This includes nonprofits, organizations, because as corporations stop making money, they stop donating to nonprofits. Lastly, not only do businesses vote by leaving the state, so do citizens. In 2021, Maryland was 44th in the U.S. for net migration out, a net loss of almost 20,000 people. In California, whom we see quite emulate a lot here in Maryland, they were 50th for net migration. They lost 367,000 people in 2021. So to repeat my primary message, to Governor Moore, MDE, and the advocates in the General Assembly of Maryland's climate reduction goals, they need to heighten their focus from banning and taxing fuels and taxing Marylanders to the need to identify and use multiple energy sources that will allow us to responsibly address more reasonable clean energy goals. And yes, this does include the use of natural gas, hydrogen, even responsible use of fossil fuels like heating oil. So I ask you to don't leave the private sector behind. And thank you in advance for listening for your consideration.
Great, thank you so much.
Yeah, hello. Thank you very much for hosting this and for listening to us. I live 3 miles from a municipal waste incinerator. It causes 800 premature deaths every single year, and it causes $55 million in health costs to my community every single year. So for the current draft of the Pathways Report to assume that's going to continue is, I think, an oversight, or it's just a non-starter. That's not leaving no Marylander behind. That's leaving 800 Marylanders behind, not to mention the $55 million. So municipal waste incineration has no pathway. It should be shut off immediately. And I won't even go into the fact that I have to subsidize something that gives me asthma and my community asthma, and I'm forced to subsidize it, and I have no choice in the matter. So I'll continue that theme because waste to energy is a boutique fuel. It could only be a very small percentage of our energy source. So to maintain the polluting infrastructure and causing harm to local communities is irresponsible, entirely irresponsible. It's almost criminal, to be honest with you. Biomass and biogas suffer the same problems. They have extremely high local health impacts. They are boutique fuels. They do not scale. They do not merit supporting the infrastructure that it would take to support them. Natural gas is methane. It's 87 times more polluting than CO2. It is the reason that we are in so much trouble and that we very likely may not survive this climate crisis. So the Pathways Report needs to exclude biogas and it needs to exclude biomass, not only because they hurt local communities and they emit more than alternative technologies that cost less, they also have the word bio in them for a reason. Bio means life. Our soils globally are being depleted at a rate that is not sustainable. In about 7 generations, we won't be able to grow food in our soils anymore. That's because what we're burning in our incinerators, we should be putting back into the soil. The biomass we're taking out of our forests should be going back into the soil. And I'll just say one more thing for my friends on the Eastern Shore who are faced with a huge build-out of factory farm chickens because there's this crazy scheme to extract methane from the chicken shit. So once you extract the methane, what's left over has just as much phosphorus and is just as much a problem to land spread as whether it had the methane extracted or not. And you've simply added the issue of a local problem of methane exposure and also propping up the methane infrastructure. For anybody who studies the problem, it's just a greenwashing scheme by the fossil fuel industry who has already bought all the methane in the ground, and even though it's going to kill the planet, by damn it, they want us all to pay for what they've already bought, and we simply can't afford it. And so that all those things need to be taken out of the Pathways report. I know I've gone a long time. I'll just say one more thing about carbon capture. It doesn't work. It hasn't been proven. It hasn't worked yet. We don't know if it'll ever work. And for this report to stake the future of our children and grandchildren on something that has never worked is irresponsible, especially when we have alternatives. There's a Yale study that was come out a couple years ago that showed a very simple pathway to clean energy that did not involve carbon capture. It is another greenwashing scheme that is only the purpose for the fossil fuel people to cover extracting more methane and having us pay for more, pay for it longer. Thanks very much for listening to me. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, let's do a quick check. Is there anyone who would like to speak who wouldn't be standing up in a microphone? We can run a microphone over to you. Okay. All right. Well, raise your hand if that's the case. We'll continue on in the meantime.
Good evening. My name is Scott Wailovich. I'm with Columbia Gas of Maryland. Columbia Gas provides affordable energy to more than 34,000 residential, commercial, and industrial customers in Western Maryland, in the counties Garrett, Allegheny, and Washington. I have written comments that I will submit for part of the record. I'll provide an overview of those comments here tonight. So, Columbia's investment of more than $270 million in Maryland over the past 15 years in repairing and replacing our aging infrastructure has reduced methane emissions on our system by approximately 40% compared to 2005 levels. This work creates jobs, enhances the economy in our service territory, and improves the environment. We strongly believe that natural gas infrastructure will and must play an important role in Maryland's energy future and in helping the state achieve its decarbonization goals. It is notable that we see continued interest in using natural gas in our service territory. Since 2016, the shares of homes using natural gas for space heating has grown from 35% to 40%, compared to a decline in homes using electrical for heat. And although the number of customers has been increasing, natural gas emissions have been declining. From 2005 through 2022, our total number of customers has grown by 9.7%, yet our customers' emissions have declined by 5.7%. Columbia is here tonight to provide comments regarding the Climate Pathways report on behalf of our customers who use our product to economically heat their homes and businesses, provide hot water, cook food for all of us, and manufacture goods and create products. Columbia has discussed the Pathways report with a number of our customers and stakeholders who believe that they will be impacted by the proposed recommendation. There is significant concern related to the potential future costs utility ratepayers, both residential and commercial, may be subject to should these recommendations be adopted. Specifically, we're concerned about the impact to low and moderate income residents. Looking at census data from 2021 and 2020, between 16.4% and 11% of residents in our service territory are living in poverty. The Maryland Food Bank estimates that more than 34,700 persons in our three-county service territory are considered food insecure. And United Way data indicates there are more than 26,000 households with working adults who, despite receiving regular paychecks, do not have enough money in their monthly budgets to afford basic needs in our service territory. The Pathways report recommends the creation of an economy-wide cap and invest program with a cap on greenhouse gas emissions. Columbia is concerned this recommendation will create a significant tax on residents and businesses throughout the state of Maryland. Such a tax will place additional burdens on poor communities and low to moderate income Marylanders. The plan also recommends zero emission appliance standard and a zero emission construction standard to achieve reductions in greenhouse gas emissions. Columbia is concerned such standards will increase the cost to home and building owners replacing appliances and equipment. The natural gas system is strong and reliable, particularly during times of peak demand. Columbia estimates it would cost $1.2 billion to build electric generation to replace just the firm capacity for our customers in Garrett, Allegheny, and Washington counties. This translates to a cost of approximately $35,000 per customer and does not include the cost of new transmission and distribution facilities, which is expected to be substantial, or the customer cost of additional equipment to electrify their home. All in, we believe each residential customer might be expected to pay over $50,000 in incremental costs. With regional electric grids already strained and challenges citing new electric infrastructure, it is prudent for Maryland to maintain the role for natural gas to meet our energy needs now and into the future. It is our hope, as the Climate Pathways Report gets considered and any future public policy related to it, that natural gas be recognized as part of the future, as part of the solutions, and that we can help reduce greenhouse gas emissions. We have promising new technologies such as renewable natural gas, adding hydrogen to our system, emerging technologies such as gas heat pumps and fuel cells, and we believe we can be a pathway to the future. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Okay, next. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to comment. A couple of things I'll provide more in written comments. One thing I hope to see in the report is a focus on some administrative capacity to implement the recommendations. Policies are great, but oftentimes those that need to implement them don't have the technical capacity or the time to implement things. I've talked to, like, for example, my local school officials, and they are on board with doing various things, but it's not their job. They're too busy with what they do now, and they don't have the technical expertise to do it. They've relied on some contractors, but sometimes weren't steered in the best way, and now have a bad taste in their mouth for doing things. So more technical capacity, more administrative capacity for schools, municipalities, hospitals, so forth, to do this stuff would be a great part to add to the report. Related to that is a focus on looking at total cost of ownership. Some people have mentioned the higher costs for various technologies around that are mentioned in the report. And I've done a lot of these things in my personal life. And I can tell you from experience, yes, there is a higher upfront cost for some of these things, but that upfront premium is going down, and people need to look at where it's going to, not where it's at today, but it's not equal yet in all cases. But the total cost of ownership, in many cases, is already less expensive and will continue to get so. So the analysis needs to factor in total cost of ownership and also look to where that is going, not to the higher cost that might be there today. And lastly, you mentioned economic impact in the report. And this is a comment and a question. Does that analysis include the avoided damages from reducing climate impacts if we implement the report?
Great, thank you for the comments. And to answer your question, no, those are the economic benefits on top of the benefits of avoided climate damage.
Hi.
Yes. Thank you. Yes, please go ahead.
So I'm not going to talk about EVs because as soon as Dave Matthews ends his tour this summer, I'm going to win the Ford F-150 that I registered for. So I'm putting that out there in the universe so that it comes my way. Couple of things, just real quick, and I'll follow up with comments also in an email. If people in Maryland have a living wage, I will gladly pay a little bit more in taxes. Also, as a Columbia Gas customer, I was not informed about anything. If there was a survey sent out, I certainly did not get one. One thing that I would like to see added to the report is exploration of the plant-based treaty. I can include that in my email that I send. So with that, one of the simplest things that we can do to reduce greenhouse gas emissions is to adopt a plant-based lifestyle. Eat more plants, plant more trees. Additionally, pesticides. We need to get rid of Roundup. We need to get rid of glyphosate, neonics. Every day I walk and I run, and every day I come across bees, earthworms, both of which are very important species to our ecosystem, and they're dying. if they're alive, I pick them up, put them back in the grass. But so many people in my neighborhood use, Roundup. They've got the pesticides from, their trusty, whatever you call it. True Green, whoever. We need to get rid of that. Montgomery County has banned it. I think on private lawns, Tacoma Park has banned it in both public and private yards. California, if we're gonna, I'm all for adopting what California does. It was, several years ago, the gentleman sued. He developed cancer as a result of as a result of Roundup. Why is it still on our shelves? It needs to be gone. That whenever it rains, it goes into our soils, it goes into our water systems, which then goes into produce that is bought. I do commend Maryland for being the first in the nation to ban styrofoam during the previous administration. Not because it's been around, not because it stays around for hundreds of years, apparently. Apparently, the reason why it was banned was because somebody decided to put it in the microwave and it caused a fire, which is interesting. I was very surprised by that. But a little bit of information there for everybody. One last thing, ban plastic bags. I'm tired of seeing them blowing all over the place. I'm tired of seeing them decorating our trees. I'm tired of seeing them in the Chesapeake Bay drainage systems. I pick up trash in my neighborhood. I pick up trash in pretty much every walk in life that I engage in. I pick up trash. I pride myself as an ocean custodian because I believe that we need to limit the plastics that go into the waterways. Again, it's our ecosystem. We share this space. We don't own it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, yeah.
Hi, you hear me?
We can
I have some random thoughts and a little stream of consciousness. First, I pay 10% less in my electric bill because I have community solar. So the concept that solar is more expensive is incorrect. It's an old fallacy. Second of all, propane dude, sir, there's one big grid, but there are a million different sources, and I think what we're trying to do, what I'd like to see, is where we're going to get utility scale renewables and solar to meet the demand that we have.
I'd like to speak to that just for a quick
Yeah.
Yeah, please finish. Please finish.
Thank you. Another thing that I just wanted, again, this is stream of consciousness. We are starting to see data centers in Maryland. Data centers demand is about 22% of Dominion Power's load in Virginia, and it's growing at 9 to 12% a year, so it doubles every 8 years or so, that demand. So you need to, I just want to flag that as something that you should put into your calculations, because this is brand new to us here. And finally, I'd just like to send you some information on forestry, on how metrics that we found in a study that we did in Frederick County about how much each acre sequesters annually, how much each acre stores of carbon. And I did see that you're not including it, but you are acknowledging the amount. And I would like to see more done to protect the forest land that we have. There wasn't a lot in there about that, but it's a critical resource. I mean, I think you acknowledge it's over 8 million metric tons that Maryland forests have in one of the, I think in the technical notes that I saw today. So if we don't protect these forests, you'll have another 8 million metric tons that you have to reduce, right? So, and finally, I want to know how you're going to fill the gap. I thought we were going to hear that today, right? The CCS report says there's a 13 million metric ton deficiency, and I think what I read in your stuff, if I'm not mistaken, was a 10 million metric ton deficiency by 2031. So that's that.
So the policies that I showed in each of the figures, the sectors are all representing the top policies that attribute to the current policy scenario and to fill that gap. And so in the report, there is a breakdown of which would be these additional policies or not. I didn't include that breakdown in this presentation. I'm happy to send that to you.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it looks like you allocated and said, okay, we got a 5% here and 5% there, but we didn't have a plan exactly to do it. So I appreciate that, and you've got my email. And the last thing I want to say, a lot of you folks, you know, we may all be different political ilks, but I'm hearing a lot of denial here. I'm proud of Maryland for making a plan to get us to 100% non-fossil fuels. Guys, you're complaining about the buggy whip industry going away. It's going away, right? We've got to get off fossil fuels, and that's what we're talking about. It's not these guys. You know, they're not going to take your
Have you
propane
ever
away.
seen what it takes to mine lithium and then ship it?
Dude, we're not here to talk about mining lithium.
How's
or
that
you.
greener?
We have
How's that
to-
reducing carbon emissions?
We gotta.
You ever run your house off batteries?
Appreciate it. We gotta go one at a time. So thanks so much for the comments.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you.
Green, go green, go green.
Yeah, yeah.
Go green.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much, and thanks for having the listening session.
There's some cobalt mines on your slides next time. Show the little kids mining the cobalt.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for
A lot greener.
having the listening
Shipping
session.
from China.
The listening session. I just wanted to suggest an excellent resource at the University of Washington, who you may already know, Professor Jan Whittington. Okay, good. Climate Smart Capital Investment Planning, and her tools on various ways, different kinds of ways to plan investments in capital, including in, for instance, electric buses, various kinds of different built environment options, and how to cost it out for climate transition. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, so there are no more people in line. Just a final check if anyone who's remaining in their chairs would like a mic brought over to make a comment. No? Okay, well, hey, thanks so much. Thanks to everyone who offered comments. I know it's like an intimidating thing to come up and try to talk about such a challenging topic in front of everybody, so really do appreciate everybody who's done that. And again, we would love written comments, mde.maryland.gov/climate change, whether you commented tonight or not, anything you'd like to share in writing, we appreciate it. Getting input from everyone is absolutely critical to sort of charting a path toward the clean energy solutions here in Maryland. So there will be more of these sessions. We're holding them throughout the state. Again, mde.maryland.gov/climate change will list all of them out. You can register for additional sessions in different parts of the state, and there will also be at least one online session as well. Ken, anything I'm missing? No. Okay. Well, thanks so much, guys. Feel free to help yourselves.
Thank you.
Thank you.